Welcome back everyone to Buy the Guide, the series where we are going through a game using the strategy guide created for it. In this case, it is StarCraft, and we are in the middle of the Zerg campaign, continuing the story in this way. I hope you enjoy your time here as much as I am enjoying going through it, because it's been amazing to see everything again, and I forgot a decent amount of how things unfold in the story, at least some of the specifics, especially the dialogue. We're heading into Mission 4 for the Zerg, and it begins with a cinematic in this case. The cinematic opens on a fiery-looking planet that appears to have an incredible amount of Zerg on it, as well as it highlights a close-up of the Hydralisk unit. The cinematic continues with some of that imagery. However, at the end, there is something extremely interesting that it plays, and I want to have everyone listen to that just briefly as it directly affects how the story will unfold in this upcoming mission. That is mysterious and shrouded in mystery. The title card says it's the Agent of the Swarm for the title of this mission, and we are still on the planet Char, which is the primary Zerg planet. The mission debriefing opens with the Cerebrit Zaz informing us that emanations from the Chrysalis have brought even more enemies to the planet Char. The Overmind gives us yet another compliment by saying that we will defeat them and we are growing more cunning with each battle. Can't believe how supportive the Zerg are of each other. The Overmind continues by stating that we must stay our wrath, which is a powerful phrase, meaning that we will not unleash our full fury because the Sleeper's rebirth is at hand. The bottom left shows our objectives now that the dialogue is completed, which is to protect the Chrysalis until it is ready to hatch. So I suppose that will be fascinating to see exactly what it hatches into. As we get into the mission, we pull up the map and we begin in the top left corner on an island. Now, I really appreciate the variety that I feel like all of the developers and the people that created the game put into this. Every map feels different from one to the next. Yes, there are similarities, of course, there basically have to be, but I really think they did a great job of trying to change it up a little bit here and there, and it's just something I appreciate as I go through the campaign. However, if we look directly to the east of where we start, to the right, that is the Terran base and a command center, as well as quite a few missile turrets, so that must be the primary base we assault. Looking just at the southern portion of this map, there's two separate Terran bases. In the middle of this map, it appears there is an island that seems to have resources on it. This leads us directly to the resource management portion, where it appears the limiting factor in this scenario is the Vespene gas, and we'll most likely have to capture the central island to get that Vespene gas, which is exactly why that island is there for us to expand to. Great that we now know that. Down below, the author states that to make the suggested air assault, we need to build a spire and upgrade it to a greater spire. We also need to build a hatchery to upgrade it to hive status. Now, we don't actually have access to either of those buildings in this mission, which is an interesting thing because I'm really surprised that we actually have not even seen what I would call an error until this point. It just goes to show how great the effort was to create this guide, and I'm sure even with this statement here about the hive and the greater spire that we don't have access to those technologies just yet, probably due to the fact that this book was created during the development phase, and I have no doubt that that probably changed after this part was written, and I'm sure the author and everyone went back to correct things as best they could, and something small like that was just overlooked, as I'm sure is so easy to have happen, and it doesn't even affect this mission whatsoever. We can still complete it without any issues. We then go to the battle strategy, where we need to build a solid defense of sunken colonies and spore colonies around our base as soon as possible. I can attest to that now that I have beat the mission. That is extremely needed, Because the Terrans will regularly drop in small groups of Marines and fire bats as it shows on the battle strategy, that leads us to actually carry this out in the game. We start the mission and a timer appears right away in the top middle to show when the chrysalis will hatch. But we are pulled over to see Raynor of all characters, and he seems to be tracking something or someone we are not really sure just yet. But he is keeping an eye out for both Zerg and General Duke at the same time. Really quickly in this level, I'm already attacked. In less than 1 minute of real life time, which of course is different than the in-game timer time, I'm also attacked from the southern side of my base. And even another short moment later, I'm attacked again, and it's a two-pronged attack from both the south and the north. That is something this mission does so extremely well in the way that it was crafted. We're on an island, and it would be so easy to where we just sit back and build up and overwhelm the enemy, but it really has a sense of pressure and that we are constantly needing to be aware to defend our base. I think that's really great development to go into this, where it ramped up the difficulty by quite a large amount, and I remember again as a child always feeling that there was some kind of pressure of needing to build up defenses to just survive the first part of this mission. I hold off those various attacks, and we get to the part where the chrysalis is about to open. Let's take a step back in order to listen to exactly how this unfolds.
Arise, my daughter. Arise, Kerrigan.
By your will, Father, I live to serve. Let all who oppose the Overmind feel the wrath of the Swarm.
Well done, Cerebrate. What I have wrought this day shall be the undoing of my enemies. Let not a Terran survive.
Mother of God. Kerrigan, what have they done to you?
In one of the largest reveals that I have ever seen in any video game that I recall has stuck with me throughout my entire life so far since I first saw this as a kid, is the fact that Kerrigan was in the chrysalis and is essentially now a Zerg unit. Incredible, incredible writing. That everything in this story is so well done, and what a crazy twist, especially if you don't see it coming, if this is your first time ever experiencing this. Again, so well done, and really feel invested in the story, because even on the screen, there is a new mission objective that we have to infest or destroy Raynor's command center. We've been with Raynor for quite a long time through many missions, and it's something that we probably don't want to do as the player, but we have to in order to further the story, which of course I want to at this point, and I want to see how this unfolds. Really, really well crafted story. Well, now that we have Kerrigan as a usable hero unit once again, but completely different now, we should go through not only how she sounds as a unit, but the attacks, how that sounds, and then what the abilities do. So let's begin with the sounds.
What is it now? On my way. All right. On my way. A bold move.
This new version of Kerrigan is so powerful because not only is there a cloaking ability, there's an ensnare ability that actively slows down all of the units that it's used on in a small range. That's very nice. There's also a consume ability. So once Kerrigan runs out of energy, consume lets you essentially eat another Zerg unit to restore energy. Let's not forget another sound that is completely burned into my brain because of how many times you hear it when you use Kerrigan.
Bold move.
There's just something about that classic whip sound I immediately associate it with Kerrigan's attack. We've gone through quite a bit of information, so the next part to pull up is the battle strategy, which declares that after we secure the main base, we should create some mutalisks in order to expand to that central island. And we should also use Kerrigan. There's a great tip that if we need help with defense, to make sure to utilize Kerrigan because extremely powerful. I suppose that's probably the best reason why. And also to not pick fights. That's a great piece of advice that we should all take with us essentially everywhere in life. And also, once the base is up and running, in the central base that is, to make sure to create 2 full groups of mutalisks, which is 24. I do get to expand to that base extremely easily. I protect it with the mutalisks. You see I have the entire infrastructure basically set up there. It's now time to showcase the other new unit that we get on this level, which it has so much going for it, this mission or level. We get a Zerg Queen. Now this unit is a specific spellcaster. They don't technically do any damage or attack anything, but one of their abilities is called Parasite that allows you to see a unit no matter where it is on the map. Incredible for vision purposes. As you can see on the screen, I'm able to see a little bit around that siege tank. I then want to showcase the other, probably most powerful ability of the Queen, which is the Spawn Broodling. It essentially destroys any unit that it is used on, from 100% HP to 0 HP. Kind of overpowered, but at the same time, it is an awesome ability and something that I don't find I utilize that much because I typically just build large armies, but it's still a really nice and fun addition to the Zerg roster. The last and final part of the battle strategy is extremely short, as the author only mentions to go in with the 24 mutalisks and basically after taking out the defense, infest Raynor's command center with a queen. That's another ability that the queen has, by the way. They can infest a command center and then create infested Terrans. Well, I begin the attack and 24 mutalisks are extremely powerful. We saw that previously on the last mission. This is another showcase of their awesome abilities where you don't really have a lot that people can do against it, especially when it's such a small area, and of course the computer isn't going to defend in the most, what's the right word, I suppose, efficient way. So as we go through this, I end up wiping them out pretty easily, or what's the other word that we should use? Sweeping them off the map extremely easily. I come across a command center. Now, this gave me a wonderful idea because normally in the campaign, you don't have almost any opportunities to infest a command center and use infested Terrans. So, of course, I take that as a cue to attack the command center because you have to damage it to a certain amount, and then you're able to infest it with a queen. I did this to showcase the insane amount of damage that infested Terrans do. You see it on the screen, 500 damage. Now, it is a suicidal unit, so it's a one-time use, but incredibly powerful unit, which you can see it is destroying these supply depots so fast and easy. I wanted to use it plenty of times because it's most likely the only chance or opportunity that I will have to even show this during the campaign, and thought, well, I never have really done it this way before, so why not go about it in this way? I then proceed to go through the base some more, and I damage Raynor's command center in order to infest that as well. Raynor comes out of the command center and can't believe it's Kerrigan, and says that he dreamt that Kerrigan was calling to him. So now we know what the cinematic was about. And Kerrigan replies that she was calling to him while in the chrysalis, instinctively reaching out to both Raynor and Arcturus. However, Jim thinks that she might kill him at this point, which is understandable. But Kerrigan does end up letting him go, saying to please never return to face the Zerg again.
Does
This marks the end of Mission 4 for the Zerg campaign. Everything in here has been such an amazing delight. I mean, everything from the story to how we see everything unfold between Raynor and Kerrigan to how we are on an island and we expand to a second island to even being so defensive with the Terran computer attacking us non-stop. Just a wonderful experience all around. So with that, we are ready to go to Mission 5. The first title card reveals that Kerrigan is already the most powerful agent of the Overmind, and yet her powers are still not fully functional because Kerrigan must undo the conditioning of her ghost training. Once that is complete, Kerrigan will aim her goals towards defeating the Protoss. The title card on the second screen shows the mission name is the Amerigo, still around the planet Char. The mission debriefing screen opens with Kerrigan expressing her appreciation for us watching over her during her incubation period with such loving, tender, and care that she equates it with a mother hen watching over its unhatched egg. Now, I may have added just a little bit of that, but really, she is appreciative and wants us to continue our vigil of watching over her and helping her. Kerrigan also declares that she would like to infiltrate a Terran science vessel to uncover the secrets of abandoned ghost projects so that the conditioning of her mind can be undone from the ghost training. It seems that Zaz, though, is questioning her motives, and really interesting that there's this dynamic of suspicion even amongst some of the Cerebrits now that is being introduced into the story. Kerrigan, of course, replies that she will do whatever she wants, and the Overmind comes in to say that the greater part of Kerrigan's spirit was left within, so that way the rest of the swarm could learn from the fierceness of Kerrigan, and that no Zerg can stray from the Overmind. Really interesting bit of lore that we gain from that little interaction. Looking to the bottom left, there are those objectives to move Kerrigan to the supercomputer, and that of course Kerrigan must survive. When we pull up the map, we start in the top right. It appears that we just need to follow these arrows throughout the facility, and there are a couple of trigger points. If we look to the bottom right, there are traps and marines, some other traps in the area as well. If we look to the left, and some teleporter pads. So that's extremely helpful to see this, and I really appreciate not having to wander throughout the entire facility. But when we go through this, I will show that it's not necessarily as easy as it looks just because you know the path to take. Before moving our units, the battle strategy shows that, of course, they're the only units that we receive on the map. There are some reinforcements that we will find, though, and they will be extremely helpful. However, the ace in the hole is Kerrigan, just meaning that that is our star unit that will help us get through this. There's a wonderful caution message at the bottom of this that shows there's a trap for our troops on the map, and all the doors close around us, despite cloaking Kerrigan. I can tell you right now, I should have read that caution message before going into this mission, because I had a little bit of a surprise when I get to that trap. Now, the author also states in this paragraph up above, just to refer to the map in order to go through. He's not going to describe every turn to take. I think that's probably the best way to go about this because it is much easier to just refer to the map in order to wind through this facility. The mission opens with Dagoth giving us two of his deadliest minions, the Hunter Killers. Thank you so much as always, Dagoth. Always so helpful towards us. Appreciate it. And the scene is already set to look as though it's a horror movie. So the atmosphere on this level seems spot on because we're on a science vessel. We can't produce units. And if we relay this to a horror movie, we are essentially the ones that are the monsters, or controlling the monsters in this case, because we have control of the Zerg. Really different compared to how you may go about this in a different way, where normally you hide from the monsters. In this case, it seems like we are controlling them. We were able to go through these first initial sets of the Terran units because our units are so extremely powerful. They have 3/3 upgrades, so they are the strongest they can potentially be. That includes Kerrigan as well. And speaking of Kerrigan, I do want to show some more specific sound bites of her going through her attack. I showed it some on the previous mission, but it is just so good and iconic, so I would like to take another moment to listen to some of her attack animations and moves.
All right. Bold move.
I wind through this map extremely easily at every turn, thanks to the author's map showing exactly where to go with those arrows. I come across some Goliaths, and it's at this point where I can really tell even looking back, and I knew it at the time I was going through this level at the same time. It's not that I was being careless or reckless, those aren't the right words. It's just that I wasn't being as cautious as I potentially could be by really making sure that my units run in at the exact right time, that they have the right formation. I'm not sending Kerrigan ahead using her cloaking ability, which I could in some of these cases. And because I end up losing some of my units, I do on the next following groups try to cloak Kerrigan to get her ahead, so my hunter killers don't need to take extra damage, and neither does Kerrigan. It worked out so well, in fact, that I moved Kerrigan on ahead by herself, still cloaked, in order to catch some additional units off guard. However, it completely backfires, because then I am the one that is attacked by 4 turrets that have detection. Kerrigan's health drops to just about half or slightly below half after those last few hits. It came to me that, well, that is not too ideal, so I am going to be a little more cautious, I tell myself, as I move forward in the level, and I do pick up some Zerglings shortly after, which is great to help bolster my forces in order to, again, take some of the damage away from Kerrigan. It's a great thing they were picked up as well, because there's a large battle almost immediately after that where the Zerglings come in incredible handy to help us go through all of those units. Does anyone else recall that caution message that gave us an exceedingly helpful and early warning of a trap? Well, I certainly did not remember that, because I walk in with Kerrigan and spring the trap by herself with no other units, and she gets dropped down to about 1/4 of her overall HP. It's at this point that as I continue through the level, I am progressing, but with immense caution at this point, because I would prefer not to lose this far into the level where I'm just about at the very end. And I see this final group of ghosts. I tell myself I'm going to be careful, send Kerrigan ahead cloaked. I've learned my lesson. I apparently did not learn my lesson, because immediately there's a trap sprung again just by a turret popping up, and I could not make this up with the timing that Kerrigan goes, as you see, to 1 health. 1 hit point. I could not have come any closer to losing the mission. Just barely make it past with my hunter killers coming in to help, at which point I am able to thankfully conclude this mission that was almost unexpectedly difficult, especially at this end point, because I think I was just not being as cautious again as I could be given the situation. I was feeling that, well, the author told us exactly where to go, I know the route to take, it should be really easy. This is definitely a jump up in difficulty compared to the Terran campaign when we went through a similar maze-style level. Before moving on to Mission 5, there is a cinematic that I would like to show everyone because it is something that has stuck with me pretty vividly throughout the years. Not the entire thing, but definitely portions of it. And going back really reminded me why it stuck with me. So before I discuss any details about it, let's actually show the cinematic for all of us to watch together.
confusion.
Hey, are we really gonna blow this place?
Only if we see a Zerg.
Yeah, got your Zerg right here.
Above all else, even watching this cinematic now really shows to me how the people that created this at Blizzard at the time were truly pioneers in the computer cinematic field. That was something that really showed computer graphics could essentially depict horror movies and something with extreme detail, especially for the time period. I can really tell how they took inspiration from, I think, in my opinion, the Alien 2 movies and some of the scenes, if any of you remember some of that. It really seemed to inspire them, but they crafted it so well, and it really stuck with me, even though it doesn't forward the story necessarily. It was just a extreme example of how well computer graphics could be created and depict something at that time. By the way, this title card shows the mission name is the Dark Templar. I love that name, nice and mysterious. Moving to the debriefing screen, Kerrigan feels a Protoss presence on the planet Char. We're introduced to an awesome Protoss character that I've always loved, so let's listen to them speak.
I know of you well, O Queen of the Zerg, for we have met before. I am Tassadar of the Templar. I remember your selfless exploits, defending humanity from the Zerg. Unfortunate it is to see that one who was once so honorable and full of life would succumb to the twisted wiles of the Overmind.
The voice actor for Tassadar did such a great job. I love the way the voice lines are delivered. It sounds like this old, wise character. It's wonderful. Kerrigan tries to goad him into wanting to fight by saying she senses he's weaker than last time that they've met. Tassadar replies that, well, perhaps it's that he just doesn't need to show power in an infantile test of will. Yet another thing that a character with this kind of deep wisdom, you would think, would say. And Kerrigan basically says, oh yeah? Well, let's fight. And that's how we go into the mission. So the objectives on the bottom left are to exterminate the Protoss intruders, and of course, as always, Kerrigan must survive. With that, let's go to the actual mission so we can look at that map. When we get in, I might as well point out that there's already words on the screen from Zaz stating that Kerrigan should maybe reconsider attacking this Protoss Templar. Kerrigan replies, oh yeah, you better not question me, essentially, and Zaz says, you will be the doom of us all. So, yet more tension between all of these Cerebrits and Kerrigan. You know what really helps with diffusing tension? Looking at a mission map. That's a great way to go about it. When we pull it up, there's that start base on the top left. That is our beginning location. To the right is a mineral patch with a square, and according to this map, a square means to set up a new base, so that is wonderful to know. If we go south of our start location, just below us is another mineral patch with another square to also expand to. Going further south, we see there's a Protoss little encampment with a circle. To the right, there's a Protoss base that looks pretty large, basically all over the right side of the map. The very middle shows a final battle area, which that is extremely intriguing. It's at this point we're going to look at the resource management portion, where our goal is to capture and hold those two resource areas in that upper portion of the map and the left side of the map. Speed is also extremely important according to the author in the scenario because the Protoss will attack over and over in waves. The battle strategy is also straightforward in this mission, where we need to not wander over before we're ready to the lower right side of the map, otherwise the Protoss will send large attack waves at us, so we will want to avoid that. And again, it's just reiterating to branch out to those resource areas and establish a base by building a lot of defenses. So basically, nice and quick goals we have at the beginning, just build up a lot of defenses and expand, and then build more defenses. This gives us a great foundation to go into the mission officially for the gameplay. Almost right as the mission begins, I was determined to be extremely cautious and quick when it came to this level, not just because of the author's advice, but I do remember as a kid, this was a mission that gave me such a hard time. I almost always had to cheat on this mission, and I think the reason for that is because I would always tend to build up slowly. I really enjoyed trying to make those large armies, but I would do it off of that one base that we start at here. I never even realized that there were other mineral patches until I saw the mission map, and I usually did not look at the map back at that time. I tended to look more at the artwork to enjoy that part of the guidebook. So in this case, one of the first things I do is to upgrade the hatchery into a lair in order to upgrade the Overlord transport. That way I can move those drones over because both of the mineral patches are on raised land that don't have any ramps leading up to them. That is extremely helpful, and I was also expecting multiple Protoss attacks because for some reason I have memories of that being something that was very consistent. But I'm really not attacked in the early parts of this mission. It ends up being much easier and slower going than I thought it would. I do have a couple of attacks here and there that happen to me, but it's really far and few between and not with powerful Protoss units. Even when I get to the point where I do expand at the southern base as well, once I establish the other northern base, I do end up getting attacked by the Protoss when they drop some units over there, but even then I suppose I was just really lucky in this playthrough of the mission because some of the Protoss units didn't attack at once, and even some other ones got stuck in some of the terrain when they dropped the units, which is some of the powerful units that the Protoss can tend to throw at you, so again, just really lucky with this playthrough so far. Since we have things really well established at this point, we should look at what we need to build next as part of our attack force. So it looks like the author says to make sure we have 3 groups of ground and air units. One of those groups is 8 to 10 Mutalisks. We should build another 8 to 10 Mutalisks, but convert them into the Guardians, which is that upgraded bombardment form. And we should also build some ground units of the Hydralisk because they can attack both ground and air. The screenshot that is included in the guidebook up above that highlighted paragraph just shows that the 3-pronged attack force will do extremely well against the Protoss. I just realized I called the Guardian an upgraded bombardment form, which is a very strange way to call that unit and explain that unit, which probably doesn't really make sense. So why don't we go through what that new unit is, because we have access to it and it is incredibly powerful. The way that we get that is by starting with the Zerg Hive, because we now have access to that technology, which is the most upgraded form of the hatchery. We also need to upgrade the Zerg Spire into a greater spire that you see on the screen. That gives us the ability to upgrade the technology to get the Guardian. Because we're speaking of this unit, we should definitely show some of the voice lines of it specifically. I always enjoyed how the Guardian sounds. It's almost like a flying dog. I don't know why. Probably because it makes a rough sound that you'll see. You'll probably also notice how their voice lines are quite a bit different than the one that I just tried. So why don't we just jump into listening to it. Why don't we take our sky dogs along with the rest of our army, now that we have everything built up, the entire force that we should, to make us extremely powerful? We should go down the bottom left side of the map, across over to the right, as the author mentioned previously in the map. So when we begin that, I do want to show some more sound from the units attacking, because the Guardian also has some great, to me, iconic sounds of when it's attacking enemy units. I must say, the author was extremely spot on with how powerful this army combination is. The ability to attack both ground and air units with the Mutalisk as well as the Hydralisk is extremely powerful, and the Guardians for that long-range, powerful air support to attack ground means that we just blow through this base without a problem at all. After going through a certain amount of structures and units, it appears there's a message that Tassadar wants to challenge Kerrigan in the middle of the map. Typically, when you go there, you have to go with Kerrigan only, otherwise the event will not trigger for them to essentially have a one-on-one battle with each other. But because I've done that so many times, I was curious if there was a way to almost cheese this part, and by cheesing I mean just going about it in a way that is not officially how it's meant to. So I thought, what are some different options? Because I have these long-range bombardment units, how can I incorporate them into this? You can see on the screen, this is exactly what I decided to do. I went about creating an enormous circle of Guardians around the entire arena that normally is supposed to be meant for that one-on-one with Kerrigan. After I drop Kerrigan and trigger the event by moving the Overlord away, immediately Tassadar gets vaporized. And it seems though it was only an illusion because it wasn't the actual Tassadar. And Tassadar says that as long as we continue to be so predictable, he need not face us at all. I don't know how that lined up so well with the fact that I basically cheated by having all of these Guardians help with this one-on-one battle. I really didn't know that that was going to be the voice line afterwards, but it fit perfectly. I even went back afterwards because I wanted to move the air units into the arena where they were very clearly inside of that area, just to make sure that it's not some kind of a bug with air units or with this Guardian unit that doesn't trigger the event. So sure enough, as I move them closer, it doesn't seem to trigger the event with Kerrigan, which shows that it is not any kind of bug. It's also worth a mention that Kerrigan has lightning powers now, so that is pretty exciting. But this does conclude Mission 6, which this has been a wonderful time to go through as well, the Zerg campaign. It is so different from the Terran perspective. Really curious to continue going through this and share the story with everybody. With that, thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate everyone that has been joining, and I hope you have enjoyed your time here. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are.